This is a group of people applauding someone who the greatest achievement in her life is denying the Gaza famine and denying the Gaza genocide. What an individual. So here we have this amazing statement from Obama's former speechwriter at the Jewish Federation of America.
I think that since October 7th, but really before then, there have been huge shifts in America on how people think about Jews and Israel. And I think that is especially true of young people. So we are now wrestling with a new, I think, generational divide here. And I think that's particularly true in that social media is now our source of media. And this, it used to be that the media you got in America was American media, and it was pretty mainstream. It generally didn't express extreme anti-Israel views. You had to go to a pretty weird bookstore to find global media and fringe media. Today, we have social media, which is a global medium. Right? Its algorithms are shaped by billions of people worldwide who don't really love Jews.
This is what the Democrat Party wants for you, and the Labour Party in the UK. You have to do government-mandated transvestigation, and also you have to love Jewish people as the prerequisite for using social media.
So while in the 1990s, a young person probably wasn't going to find Al Jazeera or someone like Nick Fuentes, today those media outlets find...
By the way, comparing Al Jazeera and Nick Fuentes is absolutely crazy work.
They find them on their phones. It's also this increasingly post-literate media, less and less text, more and more videos.
I mean, it's also a crazy problem to have, because in terms of our issues in British society, to do with post-literate, surely you would see Twitter as an issue. Twitter is just really short-form posts that are inherently reactionary. If you're making a commentary in post-literate media, the problem is not videos. It's the fact that most people want to consume short posts. And in fact, for all of the ills of TikTok, at least people have been able to push people towards academic concepts. I wish we could go back to the days where people weren't exposed to the reality in 4K. Also, anyone talking about the Holocaust and not advocating for a better media system that could have had dissident Germans posting about what was going on, and actually probably people who held fringe views posting about the Holocaust and talking about the Holocaust, not talking about Holocaust deniers, talking about people here who, would have spoken out against what the German government was doing and would have provided a different account to maybe what was in the mainstream of, how bad the situation was. How would you say that's a bad thing? The mainstream knowledge in Germany was literally anti-Semitism is good and we treat the Jews well.
You have TikTok just smashing our young people's brains all day long with video of carnage in Gaza. And this is why so many of us can't have a sane conversation with younger Jews.
Why you can't have a sane conversation? I think a far bigger and more important reason that you can't have a sane conversation with a certain amount of young Jewish people is that many of them are fed to unequivocally support Israel no matter what it does.
Because anything that we try to say to them, they are hearing it through this wall of carnage. So I want...
Oh, American war crimes get exposed and people see a genocide in real time, and apparently that's a bad thing.
To give data and information and facts and arguments, and they are just seeing in their minds carnage, and I sound obscene. And, I think, unfortunately, the very smart, bet that we made on Holocaust education to serve as anti-Semitism education, in this new media environment, I think that is beginning to break down a little bit.
It is incredible to be upset over Holocaust education. Incredible to be upset over Holocaust education. And to yes, be upset by the carnage and never ask who it's caused by.
Because, Holocaust education is absolutely essential. But I think it may be confusing some of our young people about anti-Semitism because they learn about big, strong Nazis hurting weak, emaciated Jews. And they think, oh, anti-Semitism is like anti-black racism, right? Powerful white people against powerless black people. So when on TikTok all day long,
Why would you talk like that about any form of racism? Any form of racism is unacceptable and unjust and immoral, and it all comes from the same thing of blaming an other for the problems in your society and using them as a means to legitimize your abhorrent views. The genocide isn't wrong. People seeing it is. Yes, yes. It's also funny, S. Robertson. I like how it's got the me doing the thumbs up next to your name. It adds credibility to how ridiculous that statement is.
The powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians, it's not surprising that they think, oh, I know, the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight Israel.
Because what was the Holocaust? The Holocaust, as I was explaining to that guy yesterday who was like, oh, why are you like comparing the two? Because in its logic, the Holocaust took aim at Jewish Europeans, particularly in any country that Germany could get its hands on, and sought to destroy the fabric of their social life within that society. That's what the Nazi genocide of Jewish people was. And this person is upset, and this was Obama's speechwriter. And Patrick McCarthy said, it's an important point that Holocaust education in the US was massively ramped up about post-1982 in Israeli invasion of Lebanon in order to dampen then widespread criticism of Israel, and now Zionists are fretting that it may have made people think human rights are universal. I mean, yeah, that's a very... I feel like I've seen this guy say some strange things, but that's a very good point. Like, it's a very true point as well. And like, yeah, do you know why as well? It's a good analogy. Because part of the reason that Reagan was so fucking concerned about what happened during the Israeli bombardment was that people were seeing images of people being killed by Israel in Lebanon and how horrifying those images were and were incensed by it. And now she is just more incensed because there is even more ready access than what was pumped out by newspapers then. And there is more discussion in context. And let's be frank as well, on TikTok, you don't really actually see carnage and violence. It shows like how out of touch these people actually are with what they're talking about. Why you would choose to talk about TikTok when TikTok is actually has like strong censorship of violence is so stupid, because it would be much more Twitter where you would see this kind of stuff. It would not be on TikTok. And the problem that these people are actually facing, and they are so upset by, is how injurious the settler colonial narrative is to Israel. And it's not really the violence that they're upset about, people seeing that. They are upset that people are starting to understand that Israel, at its most basic and from its very inception, is a genocidal, racist settler colony. That people aren't just a bit like, oh, I don't want violence in the Middle East. That they're like, no, fuck Israel and everything about it. Israel has no legitimacy. And from its very inception, it has settled Palestinian land. It has dispossessed the indigenous people and subjected them to huge amounts of violence. That's what she's actually upset about. And talking about it through the paradigm of, oh, I'm upset about violence on Twitter is so ridiculous. But also, just look at the other people who are at this. They had everyone's favorite genocide denier, Olivia Reingold.
I think if I were to die today, would be included in my obituary. It included, there was so much controversy over it. But no one has disputed the facts, which were that in 12 out of 12 instances of photos that were alleged to show starvation and famine in Gaza, we actually found that these children had really complicated medical histories. These were just...
This is also so fucking disgusting and shows you how, in a post-literate world, everything is bad. Because anyone who bothered to engage with the literature around famine from experts, what they spoke about was how the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's problem was that it lacked experts, that it was like a Hunger Games style system where only the fittest and most likely the strongest and not sick people within Palestinian society or who had sick family members would be able to get aid, because anyone who had a child with a very serious disease and an illness probably wouldn't have been able to leave that child for the hours that was needed to go to a GHF feeding point to then not get the kind of aid that was needed for that child. But of course, you've actually got Obama's speechwriter telling you, no, the problem is that people are seeing what Israel is doing on social media. No, that's the issue.
The first 12 examples that we looked into that were circulating online.
Exactly. Ivan against cuisine. If the best defense you have is we starve disabled children, actually, it's just unbelievable. It is just truly unbelievable that, like, they actually sat and justified this when, like, world-leading famine experts like Alex Duvall were saying the exact opposite. And I also just have to reiterate that the Gaza famine is so fucking unique. Like, it is so unique because there is an existing aid system that could have provided aid to people Israel didn't allow it. It smeared it. It attempted to prevent it from bringing aid. Gaza is tiny. It is not like Sudan, where there are multiple different causes to the famine. And also, one of the ways in which famine can even be slightly addressed is that people can return to other ways of getting food, like scavenging and stuff. In Gaza, that wasn't possible. Many people were killed for that. And I think that the best description I've ever heard is as a fishbowl. And that this was being carried out by a US ally. I really want to reiterate how good this twos piece is. Because, like, this is what they have the audacity to say. They're not upset about people living in a post-literate society. They are upset that young academics and people with knowledge about Palestine, like myself, were able to talk about it and get out content about it on the internet. They are upset that people take the Holocaust as another example of racial extermination and discrimination instead of a specific situation that only Jewish people could experience. Yes, 100%. And by the way, Todd McGowan talks about this in Universality and Identity Politics. He talks about how films, about how teaching around Nazi extermination and the Nazis generally is much more aimed at portraying it as a mad outburst, rather than drawing the threads that run through all racist, particular movements of identity politics like Nazism, and as well, talking to that guy the other day who was like, nah, the Nazis were just evil. Calling it politics is somehow, I mean, the guy was obviously stupid, but still at the same time, he was like, calling the Holocaust and the German treatment of of Jewish people, political, is actually excusing it, when it's actually taking it seriously for what it is, for understanding it, for getting in, for like actually confronting it. The speechwriter for a war criminal is defending war crimes? Yeah. Real fork found in kitchen moment. But let's just read this. Death by starvation in Gaza is not the collateral, unintended consequence of an obscure, anonymous amorphous crisis. It is the result of a deliberate policy on the part of the Israeli government bent on using the resources of a highly sophisticated state to render Palestinian life in Gaza impossible. Around the world, there are 11 places where most people are at a serious risk of hunger than Gaza, where more people are at a serious risk of hunger than in Gaza. But what this wider view of global famine reveals is not that Gaza is normal, but precisely the opposite, being the result of deliberate policy by a powerful state, commonly regarded as belonging to the exclusive club of advanced economies. The mass starvation in Gaza in the summer of 2025 is quite unlike that anywhere else in the world. This exceptional quality is further emphasized if we ask simply what percentage of the Palestinian population in Gaza is affected. In any assessment of the deliberateness of mass killing, this is a key index. It is often cited to demonstrate, for instance, the differences between the killing by the Nazi occupiers of Poland of Jews and non-Jewish Poles. Both projects of mass murder were intense, but the Nazi extermination of Jews in Poland clearly aimed from the outset at total extermination. Across the hunger hotspots in the world in 2025, what is the percentage of the population that is at risk? In Nigeria, mainly in the north, it is 1/6 of the population. In Myanmar and the DRC, it is roughly 1/4 of the population. In Yemen, Sudan, South Sudan, and Haiti, the places most commonly cited in arguments about the application of special standards to Israel, the share of the population risk is between 49 and 57%. In Gaza, the share is 100%. The risk of famine is total. If you want to read this, it's Chartbook 400, Murder Not Crisis, Why Israel's Starvation of Gaza is Exceptional in a Global Context. And yet, apparently, the problem is what people have learnt or the lessons that they're taking from the Holocaust.
And I got this idea because when I started reading this coverage, this was this past August, I started to notice that the same children were being photographed over and over again, and they were...
Imagine also calling this the achievement of your life, something that you died as a result of.
Are often photographed by different photographers, which to me suggested a level of coordination Obviously, these children are incredibly sick and often do need specialized food, but it is a
Well, maybe if Israel hadn't destroyed every single hospital and blocked the UN, we would not see this as a genocide. But Israel did. Israel did.
war zone, and so sometimes that specialized treatment can be hard to get a hold of. But
What did she just say?
specialized treatment can be hard to get a hold of. Specialized food, but it is a war zone, and
No, it is not because it is a war zone. It is because Israel has intentionally done this. This woman is so sick and evil, and I mean, actually, you know what? However anyone in here feels about Hassan at least dealt with this woman with the amount of seriousness that she should be offered.
I know who you are.
Oh, okay.
I've seen your work on denying the Gaza famine.
Oh, how you doing?
Hi. You did do that though.
This woman, the greatest achievement of this woman's life is denying the Gaza famine. That is the greatest achievement of this woman's life.
so sometimes that specialized treatment can be hard to get a hold of. But it's way more complicated than these stories.
And also, by the way, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I wonder if Olivia Reingold wrote about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Oh my god, in the article she did. Olivia Rose, NCRI's extremism researcher, added that Hamas has an incentive to spread panic about the alleged famine. That narrative undercuts one of its biggest threats, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which Israeli and US officials created to prevent aid from falling into the terrorist group's hand. Literally something that wasn't happening, and this is the greatest achievement of your life. Lying to justify starving children.
Stories allege, and actually because of our reporting at the Free Press, multiple news outlets had to issue corrections, but still these images circulate online all the time and have often motivated violence against Jews.
Ah, right. Yeah. So let's just claim that those images are responsible for that happening. By the way, the president and CEO of the Jewish Federations of America is called Eric D. Fingerhut. This guy. I was checking if he had any connections to that group that someone mentioned the other day.
Olivia, thank you for your work.
This is a group of people applauding someone who the greatest achievement in her life is denying the Gaza famine and denying the Gaza genocide. What an individual. Also, just like all of these people who complain about hate marches, this is literally just a room of people applauding genocide. That's it. That's all this room is. We also have whatever he's talking about here.
We, I would say, at the Jewish Federation of North America are optimistic about this moment. Frankly, the part that makes us the most optimistic is the parties that seem to be associated with the deal on the American side, especially Oracle and Larry Ellison personally, who's been such a strong supporter of our community. We've been very supportive of President Trump as he's been pursuing this deal, and we thank him for the perseverance and for the agreement that appears to be coming forward. And we're really hopeful that this is a moment when we can begin seriously to attack the problem of anti-Semitism on social media. This is a project that we've all been working on for a long time. This is a culmination, obviously, of the work that began with the legislation that passed during the last Congress on an overwhelming bipartisan basis. We were actually, I think, the only Jewish organization that got involved in that legislative debate when it was in front of Congress, strongly advocating for the passage. When people
Okay, he's boring. Apparently he's just saying...
asked why would the Jewish Federations of North America be involved in an issue like the TikTok bill, our answer was quite simple. That the number one issue we were hearing from our communities every day was the responsibility to address the rise of anti-Semitism, particularly the anti-Semitism that is being directed at our young people. And there was no way you could do that without...
It's also just amazing how many social media platforms have like a clear problem with anti-Semitism.
tackling the problem on the internet and social media. And TikTok was the largest and worst offender. Evidence and documentation to demonstrate that. So the hope was not...
It's also very obvious that if you care about political extremism and violence against minorities, that the biggest problem is X. Like, X is just categorically. But we'll finish up on Ted Cruz's speech.
There are pastors who love Israel who think all is fine, and my message to them is go and talk to the teenagers in your congregation. Go and talk to the 20-somethings in your congregation, because they're picking up their phone and they're watching TikTok and they're watching Instagram and they're hearing this message being driven, and it is resonating. And if you want an illustration of this, several weeks ago, J.D. Vance was down at Ole Miss at a Turning Point gathering, and one kid got up, asked this viciously anti-Semitic question. The most horrifying thing to me is what happened in the second later, which is the crowd erupted in applause.
You aren't closing that. Like, you aren't... I don't think that any of these organizations realize that it is their own fault that this has happened. Like, you have relied on your base and have collaborated with hate preachers for so long. Being upset now that they have inverted that hatred and they have turned it back on you is insane.
Not everybody. My guess is 20 to 30% of the kids there were applauding the viciously anti-Semitic question. A week or two later, there was another event with Eric and Laura Trump at Auburn University. A kid got up and said, I can do even better, and asked such an anti-Semitic question. It was filled with lies. Every word of the question was a lie, including and, but, and thee. And again, instantaneously, the reaction was the same. 20 to 30% of the kids began cheering.
Yeah, you are fucked. You have allowed hate preachers, and you have had this odious desire to unequivocally support Israel, whatever, to not even uphold basic international law. And of course, because you deny legitimate anti-Zionist speech and smear it as anti-Semitic, you delegitimize genuine anti-Semites. And you alienate the vast amount of people who actually are upset about what Israel is doing.
Now, here's the warning sign to hear. This was not a gathering at Berkeley. This was not a gathering at Yale. This was at Ole Miss and Auburn. These are a bunch of big old frat guys that are just looking to make a friend on Saturday night, who have heard the message. We are such a team. We're so polarized.
It's also so crazy that they think like hosting an event like this is going to change anything, where they literally have like Obama's former speechwriter coming out and being like, I love Israel, alongside Ted Cruz, like, I love Israel.
We're so
like, it literally pushes in to the real thing of this just undeniable bipartisan support for Israel that then is going to be transformed into, you know, unequivocal, like that for some people feeds into this narrative that Jewish people control America because they have, as I say, they have delegitimized genuine concerns. And also, does Ted Cruz ever look in the mirror? Thank God the youth are totally rejecting this guy. They're not going to be able to bring this back, and we'll watch the question in a second.
That what worries me is young people that get the message, oh, our team, we hate Israel. That is dangerous.
Amazing. Hating Israel is dangerous. Here's the question that he's talking about.
There's this notion that I'm a Christian man, and I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we might have owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-$100 billion foreign aid package to Israel to cover this, to quote Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
I mean, he meant persecution, but, like, realistically, it's a young person asking a question. Like, again, look how, like, delegitimizing. In fact, I'd forgotten what the question actually was. And, like, by the way, most Jewish people, there are many Jewish people who who practice the Jewish faith but don't support the persecution of Christians. Even spitting on Christians, by the way, and this is something I learned, is actually a tradition from the diaspora. The problem was that in the diaspora, it was largely a rejection of the treatment of Christians, but of Jewish people. That's where it came from. That's why it was a tradition. Now it obviously has a very different context with the fact that Christian communities in Jerusalem are targeted. And I do think the religious element is what makes me uncomfortable. But particularly the first part is like, you know, what are you talking about here?
Yeah, so
let me tell you now, your head is going to be blown up by the Palantir Neuralink that you've got in your head.
Let's say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the president believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States, and we're going to work with them in that case.
If you have similar interests to a country, you don't just have to give them unequivocal support of just weapon after weapon after weapon.
Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the President of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say,
what leverage did he apply to Israel? They're still allowed to kill people during a ceasefire. Like, claiming, and also, by the way, claiming that someone like this is like an anti-Semitic monster, when, like, let's be real here, apart from the religion stuff, which just makes me uncomfortable in the sense that it actually goes down, to like, sometimes it goes down to this path of being like, oh, we should be against Jewish people on their religion, but framing this as like the most anti-Semitic thing that you've ever heard is the fucking problem. He's asking a serious question of their ridiculous movement, which obviously makes no logical sense anyway.
That Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the President of the United States. They're not controlling this President of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East. Now, you ask about, sort of Jews.
I love how one of the things Vance did was like, oh, actually, Israel may have controlled other presidents, like Biden. Did you guys thank Israel? Yeah, I haven't done my daily condemnations of October the 7th, my daily remembrance of Charlie Kirk, and my daily worship of Palantir. Sorry, guys, I've got to go do this now.
Disagreeing with Christians on certain religious ideas? Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the realities is that Jews do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Obviously, Christians do believe that. There are some significant theological disagreements between Christians and Jews. My attitude is, let's have those conversations. Let's have those disagreements when we have them. But if there are shared areas of interest, we ought to be willing to do that too.
What's the shared area of interest here? And like all of this notion around like we're stabilizing the Middle East and anyone who moves on this bullshit, not unequivocally sanctioning Israel and like putting it under full control of like not allowing it to do war crimes. It is so obvious that Israel is a blot on American policy, now becoming more of a bipartisan issue in the same way. Well, South Africa obviously wasn't that much of a bipartisan issue, but the way that South Africa was this massive problem for America, for Western governments, because it's like, hey, you guys are starting to talk about like racism and stuff, and it's pretty incongruent that you're supporting this fucking apartheid state. And it's like, oh, you're talking about stability and like good things happening in the Middle East, America first policies, but yet for some reason you're allowing this country unlimited money to just destabilize the Middle East?
For example, one thing I really care about is the preservation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Christians believe that is...
This, like, Christians are undeniably being targeted. The spitting on Christians is like a minor aspect of it. There was also like Jewish settlers smashed up. Look at this. This is like state-directed policy. Jerusalem land grab. Armenian community fear eviction after contentious deal. There's regular urination on churches and stuff, and this is by your closest ally. They do nothing to rein these people in. Can we take a second to laugh at the irony of that damn company being called Palantir and Teal fully misunderstanding Tolkien? Of course, I mean, all of these people want to bastardize Tolkien. As I said when we were talking about JD Vance, about Elon Musk, something definitely that is a feature of Lord of the Rings that you can see in the like sort of iconography of the film, and also I assume the books is in my understanding, I never read the books, but when I was a kid, my father used to read them to me all the time. My dad, I don't really know why I called him father, he's my dad, but he used to read them to us when we were kids. And I remember like so much of it is just descriptions of beautiful landscapes, and like so much of it is about the destruction of those landscapes. Palantir is a country destroying these things.
The site where Jesus Christ was crucified, and also that his tomb is right there as well. My attitude is, if we can work with...
My attitude is unequivocal support for Israel, another $1 billion for them, blow up more Palestinian kids, steal the community of the Jewish Armenians. Also amazing that there is absolutely no concern for any Christians in Gaza.
With our friends in Israel to make sure that Christians have safe access to that site, that's an obvious area of common interest. I am fine with that. What I'm not okay with is any country coming before the interests of American citizens, and it is important for all of us, assuming we're American citizens.
Well, how would being... Also, by the way, in my understanding, loan guarantees to Israel. Something that isn't talked about, which... Read this. Subject to terms and conditions of this section during the period 1st of October ending in 1997, the President is authorized to issue guarantees against losses incurred in connection with loans to Israel as a result of Israel's extraordinary effort to resettle and absorb immigrants into Israel from the Republic of the Soviet Union. It was implied to me, or it was implied by Abdul Razak Takriti in one of the podcasts, that this is still something that is going on. Yeah, here we go. The Ministry of Finance. In 2003, the US government provided Israel, allowing for up to $9 billion in foreign borrowing. Bonds issued by the US government of Israel with the US government guarantee system enjoy the same credit rating as the United States and thus reduces the financial costs. In 2005, the program was extended until 2008, and in 2006 it was extended until 2011. In 2012, the House of Representatives approved an extension until 2015. In December 2015, the US House of Representatives again approved an extension set to expire in October 2019. In September 2019, the US once again extended the programs until 2023. So these are basically like loans, in my understanding, that Israel cannot falter on, that enjoy the same credit rating as like the US. They're like debt securities. Crazy stuff.
To put the interest of our own country first. That's what we're going to do.
Like, I know it doesn't fix all the problems, but I was like, but just think about how much like of this stupid money that is not only wasted on Israel, but is wasted on the entire Middle East, in creating a Middle East that is based on ensuring that Israel has allies in the region, that Israel has dictatorships that support it. How much money is wasted on that could just be repurposed for American social programs?
That's what we try to do every single day, I promise you. Thank you.
The loan guarantees are actually like a thing that aren't really talked about, but are a way that basically Israel gets no-fault loans from the American government, which in my understanding, it's just crazy, and that just keep being extended over and over again. So I thought that I'd understood it wrong, but I didn't want to come across as like an idiot. Thanks to the Google AI overview. A loan guarantee is a promise by a third party, the guarantor, to pay the debt of the borrower if the borrower defaults. It reduces the lender's risk, making it possible for borrowers to get loans that they may not otherwise qualify for.